Mhm. So I see there's a few people on, so I just want to let you know that we're going to be getting started in about 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. Okay, everybody, we'll get started in about 2 minutes. I see Miguel's on.
Test. Can you hear me okay?
Test. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Oh, right on.
Oh, yeah.
There's just a
We're
bit
going
of
to get started in just 1 more minute.
What?
There's a
I
bit
just
of
wanted to make sure this all worked out. What's that?
I'm getting a bad echo. Should
Getting
maybe I should
a
put
bad echo. Maybe I should put echo on.
Yeah, so when I'm speaking, just mute yours maybe, and then when you speak, I'll mute mine.
Great.
Great.
You're the tech guy, so you should know. All right. I think we are just going to go ahead and get started here. I just want to make sure all this stuff's exit out. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started, everybody. So welcome to tonight's monthly Team Go-Getters team call, or I should say YouTube live thingy. I'm so excited for tonight because we have Miguel on. I know you guys all know him and love him and everything, and I know you're very, very excited to hear from him. But just quickly, before we get into his topic, which is, you guys are just going to love it. It's like so what we're all about. But I just wanted to remind you guys, I know you guys probably were on the surge last night, and I know you're probably on the National Wake Up Call, but if you were not, the National Wake Up Call was awesome. It was Jimmy Hayes Nelson, and he spoke on Monday, and if you get the weekly team email or whatever, you know that you can just listen to the recording just by calling in. It's super easy. But he went through something so very interesting about this new launch that's going on. And so for those of you who don't know, Beachbody On Demand, which is going to be such a game changer for our business, just launched yesterday. And so he was on the call, and he said something very interesting because he's been a coach for a long time. And so a lot of new things have come about into the world, into the Beachbody world since he's been a coach. Like when Shakeology was launched, half of the people in the room were excited and couldn't wait to get back and blow up their business. And the other half of the room was not so much. They were a little on the fence. They didn't know how this was going to affect what they already had going because people are scared of change. The same thing happened for when they came out with challenge packs. A lot of people were so excited and were begging and waiting for this. And everybody, and half the people, half the coaches that already had their own traction and momentum going said, hey, I got this. I don't need a challenge pack. Are you kidding me? I am doing awesome, and this is just like ridiculous. I don't need all that. And so the people who embraced the change of challenge packs and embraced the change of Shakeology just blew up. They passed up the leaders that were like founding coaches or like top coaches at that moment when these launches took place. These newbie coaches passed up those leaders because they embraced it. So with that said, I just want to make sure that you go back and listen to that recording so you can hear Jimmy's story because it was very, very, it was awesome. He's such a great speaker. And then also listen to the surge. Beachbody On Demand, like I said, it launched, and this is huge. And I don't even want to say anything else about it because I want you to go on the surge to hear all of it. I want you to hear everything there is to know about it from Carl because he has a vision, and I want you to feel his energy and really get that vision that he has for this and just embrace it. I hope that's, you know, I've heard some people, not really on our team, but I did hear some people, you know, saying, oh, I don't know about this or whatever. And I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? I've been waiting for this. This is awesome. And I know that Miguel thinks that too. So, yeah, so it's a really exciting thing. So get on the surge and listen to that recording, okay, guys? And then watch on the Team Go-Getters Facebook page because I'm going to be doing the shout-outs for the month for the Success Club, top producers, top recruiters, that kind of stuff. So I'll be doing that in the page. So I want to get right to it because I want to give Miguel all the time he needs on this because he is such a great speaker. I had a chance to hear him speak at Leadership this past fall, and I was seriously like on the edge of my seat. He's full of energy. He's positive. He's just like totally my kind of speaker. And hello, he's like crushing this business. So I cannot wait to hear what he has to say. So just a little bit about him. I know you guys know all about him and love him, but he is three-time Canadian top coach. So obviously he's from Canada. That's probably why we click because I'm almost in Canada. So he's three-time top coach for Canada, two-time elite coach, number 11. So last year in 2014, out of like 300,000 coaches or however many coaches exactly there are to this date, he was ranked number 11 out of all those coaches. He has 14 lifetime diamonds. He's 6-star in his first CBC, 6-star in his second CBC, and 1-star in his third. And so for those of you who just don't, if you're new, because I know there's a lot of new coaches that get on this call, just so you know what that means, that he's a rock star, okay? So you'll learn all that other stuff as you go. You don't have to worry about what a second CBC and all that kind of stuff is right now. He's a Success Club 5 All-Star legend and a Success Club 10 All-Star. Now, I'm going to have him, tonight part of his call is going to be sharing his story because it's really, like I said, I've heard him speak a couple times and it's really awesome. So I'm going to have him not only give us tips tonight, but also share a little bit more about his story. So I'm actually going to mute my line, and Miguel, I'll have you take over.
Great. I'll just assume you guys can hear me okay, and if at some point you can't hear me, Mindy, just let me know, and I will try and figure out what's going on. So hopefully you guys can hear me. Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much, Mindy, for having me on this call. I was just like so excited to actually be a part of your call. You know, originally when I reached out to you, it's because I wanted you on our team call, and then when you said, hey, like, would you mind being on my call, I thought that was crazy because when I started as a coach, you know, you were actually one of the people that I was really looking up to, and I'll go into that a little bit when I tell you guys my story, so which I'll start with right away. But I just really wanted to say thank you so much, and it's a huge honor to be on this call with your amazing team, and I do value your time, and I know that you could be doing a lot of other things. I know that I'm big into House of Cards right now, and the new season just came out, so you could be watching House of Cards right now on Netflix, but you're on here hoping to get some value. So I promise you, I will give you at least one thing that I'm hoping will ideally change your business, if not maybe give you something to think about. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and truly it is really truly an honor. I'll get started a little bit with my story, tell you a little bit about how all this happened and transpired, and really kind of explain how, you know, this wasn't really kind of an overnight thing. It was really something that kind of started from the beginning and kind of morphed into this Beachbody thing. And the reason I'm going to go back in time a little bit, because one of the things I want you to write down right now, I'm big into giving you guys value right away, is I want you to write down that your entire life is actually a map. I know it sounds crazy, and what do I mean by that? But your entire life is a map. And the further you go along in your life, you're actually drawing and designing this incredible map that is going to lead to the goal. And as you go on this journey in your life, through the different corners and the ups and the horrible downs that we all have that we never share on our Facebook highlight reel, that's your clues. That is your vision. That is like your North Star. Every time you get that little clue, you need to tune into those little things, because those little things are telling you where you need to go and the reason that you were put on this earth. I was watching a really cool TED Talk the other day that mentioned that the chances of you being born to the parents that you were born to, in the time that you were born, in the society that you live in the skin color that you were born to, the nationality, the language that you speak, the chances of you literally being born were 4 trillion to 1. 1 in 4 trillion. That's the chances of you actually being born. And do you think that maybe you were put here with some divine purpose? I fully believe so. I share a lot of that on my team calls personally. I'll stick to the script, I'll say, but I will tell you that I always say, you know, God bless and thank you so much for everything that's happened in my life. So that's the number one thing I want you to write down, is your entire life is a roadmap. So let me rewind the tape a little bit, because sometimes I think people think that things just happen overnight, and they don't. And I want to rewind the tape a little bit to give you some value in terms of like where my true journey really started. And I've actually really never shared any of this prior to this call. And so I wanted to really share with you so you guys kind of understand kind of where I came from. So my parents actually immigrated to Canada when I was 3 years old. It was, I can't remember, I believe it was in the winter, middle of January, something like that. And by the way, if you see me look over to the side, I'm actually a single parent tonight, so my kids running around, they're usually fine, but if I jump off for some reason, something horrible has happened, and that's life. But yeah, so going back to it, so my parents immigrated to Canada when I was 3, and we lived in Chile. We had a great life there in Chile, and things happened, circumstances happened in that country, And my dad, I still remember him telling me, he was telling me that at one point he didn't want to learn English in school, but one of his teachers told him, hey, like, you'll never know what could happen. And his teacher told him, you never know what could happen in your life. And my dad said, well, here's the thing, like, we're set, everything's great, Chile's an amazing country, up and coming, we've got, a great government, and everything changed overnight. Literally everything changed overnight. And I won't go through into that detail, but parents immigrated to Canada when I was 3, literally with $1,000 in their pocket, didn't really know the language that well, got jobs. My mom got a job working actually in an apartment, cleaning apartments, horrible stuff like that, and good for them because they, there's a lot of options when you immigrate to countries, but they really wanted to work really hard and provide for our family. My dad got a job working actually at a fur factory, and to rewind a little bit more, my parents, were very well educated. It's just a matter of when they came to the new country, a lot of what they had learned, wasn't recognized in Canada. So unfortunately, although you needed to have certain requirements to immigrate, none of that was actually, really taken. You would have had to go to school for 10, 15 years to get everything back, basically. And they made a decision. They decided then that they were not going to do that. They were going to be there for us, allow us to watch, allow them to watch us grow up as kids and be there for us and our family. And that's kind of how things got started. I went to a public school, and I remember like in grade 4 is like the first time I can remember is for some weird reason, and I was a total geek my whole upbringing and stuff. For some weird reason, like even though I was a total geek, like people seemed to really like, not, I don't want to say look up to me, but when I talked, they would listen. Because I always chose my words fairly wisely. And it wasn't until, grade 6 as things started really going my way. I started doing really well academically in a public school and ended up they had like a grade 6 valedictorian. And I remember doing a speech. They asked me to do kind of a valedictorian speech. And I remember working on this speech for quite some time because I really wanted to do very, very well at this speech. And I remember delivering it, and actually I was talking to my mom about this yesterday because she just actually was visiting Chile for 3 months, and she told me how basically like when I wrote this speech, it seemed like an adult had written this speech. And I never thought about it again. I just remember giving the speech, and everyone was like looking at me funny and weird, and I didn't know why at the time, right? I was like 12. So that was kind of a moment in my life. And then fast forward a bit more, the Super Nintendo came out, and you're like, why am I talking to you about Super Nintendos? The Super Nintendo came out, and again, my family, they worked hard. We never had any issues like that financially, but ultimately, a Super Nintendo was expensive back then. I think it was like 91, 92. A Super Nintendo would have been something like $200, $300 back then, which was very, very expensive. And I asked my parents for a Super Nintendo. And this moment completely changed my life. I'll never forget. My dad told me, he's like, "Hey, if you want the Super Nintendo, it's a cool thing, but you're gonna have to do something for me." And I said, "Okay, sure, I can do anything, right? Kids can think they can do anything." And he's like, "Okay, well, I need you to listen to some cassettes." Okay, so for those of you that are younger, I'm sorry. I'm 35. I've been around the block a little while, but and 35 is like can be ancient in Beachbody world. There's some up and comers that are so young. I always look at them. I'm like, wow, if I was only 22 or 23, I couldn't believe what I could do now. But yeah, so my dad told me to listen to some audio cassettes, and I didn't know what they were. And he's like, you got to do one audio cassette every single day for 30 days, and you also have to write it in this journal. It's a really cool thing. You're gonna like it, and as soon as you're done the program, I'll buy you the Super Nintendo. And I was like, okay, well, that seems pretty easy. 30 days, anyone can do anything for 30 days, right? Or 21 days, I guess you could say as a joke. So I thought, okay, I'll do it. And I started working on it. I started doing the thing, and little did I know what this was. This was Personal Power, Tony Robbins' big workout program that ended up changing the lives of so many people, and I ended up doing Personal Power. It was like the first program he really ever came out with. It was, funny enough, it was an infomercial, and at the time it was the #1 infomercial on television, and I started doing it. It actually took me a few times to do it and start over, but I learned things when I was like 12. I learned about growth and how to analyze your life, and I learned how to write a success journal. and all of these things that never were taught in school, thinking back now, right? And so I went through this program, and actually moving forward a bit, my dad ended up going to, at the time they were called Ultimate Power events, and we ended up going to an Ultimate Power event, I remember, and I was a little bit older now, might have been in grade 7 or 8, and I remember they did, at one point, I remember this vividly, they were doing the whole exercise, and I was there with my dad, because my parents never left us with babysitters, not once in their life. They really wanted to be there with us, and so I remember being there with my dad at this convention. I was obviously the only kid, and I think it was a room at the time. It wasn't that big, so I think it was a room of like 80, 90 people. I can't remember exactly. And they did this breaking exercise. I still remember it vividly. And it was like you would write your fear in the middle of this piece of wood, like what's your biggest fear? And I actually, funny enough, I took this, and I do this with my team now. We write out our biggest fear in the middle, and I get my team to put all the things that they want outside of their biggest fear, all the things, all the dreams that they would ever want to accomplish in their life. And at the end of the exercise, the second day, I get them to actually take that paper, burn it, and throw it in the toilet. Now, if you want to do that, go ahead. I'm not responsible for any fires, but it works really well. It's something that we've added to our new coach bootcamp. And anyway, so we're writing this in the circle. We're writing our biggest fear, and we're like breaking the wood. And as you break the wood, it's this big emotional thing at the time. It was equivalent to his fire walking that he does now. And you break the board, and your fear is kind of gone. And I remember there was this one lady there. I remember my dad really working with her. I remember this vividly. And my dad, I don't know if he's on this call because he's on our team. He's a coach. He's an Emerald coach, and he's gotten great results beyond EX3. And I remember this lady vividly trying to break this fear, and she couldn't do it. And I remember my dad, and then, again, this is going back a long time, looking at her and holding her and really kind of trying to get out of her what the real issue was, right? And at this point, like, I'm watching, I remember this. I remember, like, the personal power people, like the Tony Robbins people, like, all, like, trying to help this lady do this exercise because everyone else had broken it. And my dad starts, like, talking to her and, like, and helping her ultimately, right? Like, taking this person that I don't remember what she was saying, but it was personal stuff, taking this person that had all these personal issues in her life, and, like, if she wasn't going to break this board, her life would have maybe completely been different and been over. Like, it was such an emotional thing for her. And I remember, I don't know what all happened, I don't want to make stuff up, but I remember her finally punching it and breaking this board. And it was this huge thing for her. And in my mind, I remember that. I remember looking up to my dad at that point in a different way and kind of going, wow, like, if one day I could do half of what my dad did that moment for people, that would be pretty cool. If you could help other people just become better, right? And I remember that moment vividly. So that was another moment in my life. And fast forward a bit further, this is the part where I end up, I start my first business. So in all of this, again, no babysitters. I remember we always used to go out to buy groceries, and in my mind, it was like a 3-hour grocery trip. I don't know if it was 20 minutes, but I remember going to buy groceries, and at this point, my parents have a home daycare. So we grew up with kids, which is also a funny thing, because I love kids, and I know why, because I grew up with kids. Like, my whole life, literally, I remember waking up at 7 a.m., and there would be kids running around the place, and my dad was always playing with all of us. I still remember all these things, right? And so anyway, so I remember we were at the mall, and I remember, sorry, not the mall, the superstores. In Canada, they're called Superstore. In the U.S., they're called Walmarts and that kind of stuff. So anyway, all these times that I would go with my parents to the store, I loved going to the magazine section. And while most kids like comic books and stuff like that, I, for some weird reason, loved the entrepreneur magazines. Like, I would buy the home business magazines. Actually, sorry, I wouldn't buy them. I would look at them and read them there, and sometimes my parents would buy them for me. But I remember reading all these different things and reading about entrepreneurs and how these people were coming up with ideas and sales letters and how all these processes worked. And I just thought, like, wow, it would be so cool to one day, like, start my own business, right? And at this point, I had won a lot of awards, so I was actually going to a private school at this point, and my parents were paying for it. It was very expensive, but they wanted me to have the best education, so, I'm forever grateful for them for that. But I remember at one point, the internet hadn't even been born yet. That's how old I am. They had this thing called this bulletin board systems. So everyone had, like, a dial-up modem. I don't know if you remember back in the day, but it was like this screeching sounds where, like, you'd connect up and it'd be like horrible noises, and that's how you would connect to the internet. So back then, like, there was these things called bulletin board systems, and they were these, like, basically kind of supercomputers that had like 100 of these kind of modems in them. and people would like buy 100 phone lines to their house so that other people with other modems, right, kind of like the internet, would dial into this computer and have like chats and play games and do all these kind of cool things like that. So I remember this very, very vividly. And so I remember like spending a lot of time dialing these different numbers because there wasn't really a big list of like phone numbers of where to find. I remember I would take notes. I would always take notes on a piece of paper and be like, this phone number, after dialing like 100, I'd be like, well, that phone number had the best games. Or, this phone number had the best word processors. I remember doing all these things. And so finally I decided, hey, what the heck? Why don't I wouldn't it be a really cool thing if I came up with like maybe this list that I have and put it for sale so people could buy it, right? And back in the day there was no Facebook, so I long story short, I'll summarize it. I ended up basically buying an ad in the newspaper to try and sell these lists. And I remember selling the list, and I remember that it was pretty successful. That was really my first kind of business. I didn't know whether or not it would work, but it worked. And people were sending me money, literally in envelopes, as the Entrepreneur magazine said that people would. Now, I didn't send their stuff because that's what, if you read the Entrepreneur magazines back then, it was like, put $5 in the mail, you might make some money kind of a thing. It was really weird. I used the same concept, though, to literally sell my list of top BBSs. It'd be like top websites in the world. Basically, it was kind of like a Google, but there was no Google back then. I just created this list. And I remember as I was sending this list, I started thinking of like, well, if these people are sending me money, like $5 for this list, which I called for shipping and handling, maybe they might want to buy something else. I remember flipping it over, and I would type these lists up in a typewriter, by the way, and then photocopy them on at the library with those little cards you had to put in and buy money to do photocopies on. And so I remember like at the back of the list, I started writing like, hey, if you want like a subscription to my list, send me $30 and I'll send you lifetime whatever. So that's kind of was my first portrayal into this whole thing. And then I'll tell you two more stories, and then I'll explain to you why I'm telling you all this and why it's important. And I think it's an interesting story. So I end up finally one day I end up in school, and I was really good from the beginning at computers. I was just always natural at programming and all this kind of stuff. And a big reason for that is we actually didn't have a computer at home, and I would go to my uncle's house on the weekends, and I basically learned to program by writing stuff out on paper. I'd go to the library, I'd take out programming books, and I would write on pieces of paper kind of like my programming code that I would try out later on the computer to see if it would work. So obviously, as a kid, you want to get it right the first time so you have more time to play the game that you're trying to make. So I just got really good at that stuff. And in school, I made a big mistake, one of my first of many big mistakes, and this is a story to tell you that you can make mistakes, and trust me, and you can recover from those mistakes if you see what you're supposed to do with it, and if you can take it as a lesson and learn and move forward. So in school, I think it was grade 10, I was always great at computers, so I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I took the assignments home from the computer lab and basically did all the assignments before school even started, do them over the summer, and do some of them, in spares and stuff at school, and really get all my assignments done so that I would have a spare. So instead of having to go to programming class, I'd have a spare, right? And so I started doing that, and what I found out was I was bored, right? They didn't give me a spare. They told me you had to go to computer class anyway, so I would sit there and be bored. I noticed that teachers had access to games and stuff that I thought, hey, if I could get access to those games, that wouldn't it be pretty cool? I could play those games, and that would be very interesting. And so I made a mistake. I made a mistake of, well, not a mistake. It was actually kind of neat. And maybe I'll explain to you what I did. Basically, what I did is I wrote a program that stole people's passwords in a way. So I noticed that when teachers would sit down and log in, it would show them this kind of login screen to this computer system, and I basically figured out a way to basically, when they would log in, I would capture their username and their password, and I would send them on their way, but I would have it. And so I did this just to play games. The problem was the entrepreneur side turned on, and I looked at this, and I was like, okay, well, this might be pretty cool. Why don't I sell this software to people for $5, and we can make some pretty good money off this. Long story short, obviously got caught for it. Huge suspension stuff happened. I ended up out of the computer class for the rest of the semester. Luckily, I had done all my assignments, so I ended up with basically 55% at the time in my computer class, and I ended up with another bad mark in keyboarding because I couldn't go to keyboarding because I wasn't allowed in the computer lab because I was dangerous or whatever. Funny thing is, like, fast forward a bit, I ended up getting a job working as a Microsoft consultant. Ended up having an awesome career in computers before Beachbody, and that event really actually showed me that I was supposed to be in computers, and I ended up doing really well with that. And had a great corporate job, and that's where the weight started joining in, right? Because every year I'd gain 5 pounds, gain 5 pounds, gain 5 pounds, and back before all this, I was really active. My dad owned a martial arts academy. I went there all the time. He still does. I was in really good shape. But then as computers started taking off, I started traveling. I started presenting at places like Internet Week in New York City, presenting all over North America, really, on technical things. And later on in my career, a lot of my job was really entertaining clients. So I'd go to specific clients, cities, take them out for dinner, talk about their issues. And to be clear, it wasn't like, how to run Windows or how to do things like that. It was like literally helping Fortune 500 companies design complex infrastructures and launch social media campaigns. So that's what I was doing near the end of my career with the Microsoft consulting stuff. So long story short, when Beachbody came along, what ended up happening was I got really sick. I ended up in the hospital. One day I was driving my kids home from daycare, and I remember driving them home from daycare, and my left hand started feeling really numb. Like I was driving, and my left hand started feeling kind of numb, and I couldn't feel it. I didn't know what was going on. And I got home, helped them get to bed, had a shower. And while I'm in the shower, I'm like massaging, my head a bit, and I can't feel like my scalp or my hair, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. So I go and lie down. And I end up telling my wife, I tell her, I'm like, hey, I'm not feeling good. I'm going to go lie down. And she right away knows, like, I'm not someone that lies down. I'm like, go, go, go all the time, always have been. For some reason, I feel like I have to do 5 things in one lifetime. So she's like, what's going on? What's wrong? And I tell her, no big deal. I'm like, no big deal. I just can't feel the left side of my body. It's no big deal. I'm sure if I lie down, I'll be good. She ends up basically winning the argument. I end up getting in the car, going to the hospital. And I remember getting to the hospital, it's packed, and in Canada we have like quote-unquote free healthcare, so your emergency room wait time is like basically until infinity, 18, 20, 50 hours if it's not serious. And they were checking me out and stuff, and they immediately pull me in, and I'm like, okay, this is not good if they're pulling me in immediately. They hooked me up to a bunch of stuff. I look at my cell phone, it's died because it was like later on in the day, I hadn't charged it yet. And I'm looking up in the ceiling. I don't want to bug the doctors. I look to the side, and I see my blood pressure monitor says like 195 over 140. I'm smart enough to know that's super not good. And so they're freaking out. I end up staying there for a bit. They end up discharging me because my blood pressure goes down a little bit. But they're like, you need to get to a doctor right away tomorrow. We're not sure what's going on. You got to go for a bunch of tests. I end up going for a bunch of tests for about a month. No one tells me to lose any weight. At this point, I'm like 230 pounds. And I feel like I've lost complete control of my life. Like, I don't know if some of you ever had that feeling where you feel like completely powerless, like you can't control anything, and it's almost intoxicating, and it can completely destroy you. And that's when I started trying to run. I went for a run. I love to run now, but I went for a run. I ran like 2 houses, and my knees like literally swelled up by the time I was in the shower. I stopped because I couldn't run anymore. And I thought, okay, well, running's not going to work for me. I started going to the gym. I went to the gym like once or twice, and I remember like taking off my shirt in the locker room. And, guys, like we're like, proud guys or whatever. And I knew that I was in shape before, so I'm sitting there in the locker room, and there's a guy I'm pretty sure was on some kind of juice or whatever you want to call it, because he's freaking ripped. And I'm sitting there like horrible. So obviously don't want to go back there again. And I'd pretty much given up. And I remember I was like having a beer or something because I'd pretty much given up, and I was like, okay, whatever, I'll take these pills or whatever. And they gave me these pills and for blood pressure. I hadn't taken them yet, and I see this commercial, right? It's for a commercial for TurboFire, and I didn't know what I was watching at the time. It's just I was watching infomercials. Well, actually, no, that's not right. My wife was watching infomercials. So this commercial comes on for TurboFire, and I remember this like super excited lady doing some stuff, and P90X as well was showing at the time, so I was watching P90X. I ended up calling in to buy P90X. And when I called them, I remember like I ordered everything, right? Like, yeah, I want that. I want everything, ultimate, perfect, everything. I think I paid like $300 and some for like the chin-up bar, like literally everything you could buy, the supplements, everything, right? My wife ends up buying TurboFire, everything again. And I think it came to like almost $1,000, like with everything Canadian, right? Because I'm in Canada, so it takes like 50 of our dollars for one of yours. Just kidding. So I ended up buying all that stuff, and I remember trying P90X, and I tried it, and for the first 3 days, it was just not my thing. It wasn't my thing. I ended up falling the last day trying to do a chin-up or something. I remember like I fell flat on my butt, and I just felt totally defeated. I go upstairs again, grab a beer, I sit down, I'm like, this isn't working. Everybody on TV must be like photoshopped. They must all be professional trainers. The results have to be fake. No one could ever get results with this program. You attack things you don't understand or that don't work for you, right? I'm sure you've all heard that before. And my wife says, well, why don't you try TurboFire? She hasn't opened it yet, hasn't done anything with it. So I was like, okay, whatever. So the next day, for some reason, I see TurboFire sitting there, and I open it up. I flip through the book. I'm like, ooh, hit 15 workout, 15-minute workout. Perfect. That's the workout I'm going to do. So I pop that guy in, and then the spunky girl comes on. I'm like, okay, this is a little more fun, right? A little more energetic, and I like energy, obviously. And so I'm like, okay, I can do this. And it starts pretty okay, right? And I think I'm like working out already, right? I'm like, oh, this is crazy. And I'm like dying already, and I didn't realize it was the freaking warm-up to the hit 15. And then all of a sudden the siren goes on, and she just starts jumping up and down like a mad woman. I'm like, what is happening? And right then I learned that HIIT stands for high intensity interval training. Okay, not my thing, but Shalene was like really motivating. And so I remember, I swear, and I'm sorry ladies, but I'm watching this thing, I'm like, all these freaking ladies are doing this, and I'm freaking dying. I'm going to get through this freaking workout, or I'd rather freaking die. So I keep going through. I'm doing like the knee ups. I probably look like a freaking idiot doing it. And I get to the end. I remember in that video specifically, she looks at you and she goes, it's you, baby, all you, and you can do this. I know it sounds weird, but for some reason that has stuck with me this entire career as a coach. The fact that she said that to me was the first person in this entire time that actually said that I could do it. And I was like, I can do this. And there's like one more round. This is the last one. I'm going to do the best I possibly can. I even tried jumping at one of those jump things that they do. And I did. I finished the 15 workout. I ended up doing the workout because I love the workout. It's so fun. I ended up losing 55 pounds over the 90-day period. I've gone on now to lose about 80 or so, and depending on the week, as Carl says, if it's a pizza week, I go up 5-10 pounds, and if it's not, I go down 5 or 10 pounds. That's kind of how I go. But ultimately, like, TurboFire saved my life. It saved my life, and I got a chance to tell Shalene this for the first time. Actually, it was funny. Coach Summit this year because I'd never actually seen her before this, and it was pretty cool for me. I don't think she even remembers, but maybe she does. But it meant a lot to me, and so yeah. So anyway, so my friend calls me up and he's like, dude, like you've gotten so many results, because I started going for lunch with people because I basically went into like shell mode to get all these results, and I started telling all these people about all these things. And the results, and actually one person told me, hey man, like, are you sick? Like, you lost so much weight. And so my friend calls me up and says, hey, you should become a Beachbody coach, and how does it work? And he explains it to me, and he's Canadian, and he's a cop, so I kind of trust him. But after like about 5 minutes, I'm like, dude, that sounds like a pyramid scheme. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm sure it's not actually Beachbody. It's probably like some guy trying to scam you guy. I'm pretty sure totally fake. Hey man, I'm embarrassed for you. Don't even do it. Right? And so I didn't do it. And then a couple of weeks goes by. It hasn't launched yet in Canada, and now the launch is coming up. And I end up watching a call from Lindsay Matway, who's my personally sponsored coach. And I end up watching the call. It sounds really cool. And I don't sign up right away. I end up doing research for a day, and this is the truth, so I just want to tell you the truth. I found all these cool coaches. I remember looking at Scotty Hobbs, and I remember Janelle Summers stuff, and all these different coaches. I was like, wow, like, hey, like lots of these people, like they're like me. They just want to help people, and I guess I could be a part of that. And so I just figured I'll sign up with Lindsay because that was the first one I saw, and I ended up signing up with her. I didn't realize like if I should sign up with my friend or whatever. I didn't get any of that stuff. I thought Lindsay could help me, and I ended up signing up as a coach, and my life changed. I started helping people. I started sharing my story, and it just started touching people, just like I'm sharing with you, right? Because if you're unique to yourself and you share your own story, all of you have these unique stories, right? And so I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never done network marketing before. My wife had had like candle parties, Norwex parties, and those awesome weird parties that you can have. And I'd never seen her make a penny, and her friends never made a penny other than like maybe they got some free gifts. So I didn't know anything about this stuff. I just started helping people, and I became Diamond in 24 days. And I didn't even know what Diamond was. I remember Lindsay Matley calling me up, and she's like, "You're going to be the first Diamond." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "What?" I'm like, "What do I have to do?" And she's like, "Well, just do this thing, and you'll get a free jacket." I was like, "Cool, I'll do it." And so I did it, and I became a Diamond in 24 days. My first week, I hadn't even sold a challenge pack. Right, and then I remember Carl tweets like, "We have the first Canadian Diamond." That's when it became real to me, because honestly, until that point, I kind of thought it was like maybe a scam still. Like I didn't know what was going on. Like I hadn't even bought a challenge pack. I know it's embarrassing, but I only signed up for $40. So I was like, whatever. So then Carl Deichler tweets. And I remember looking to see if it was actually his real Twitter account. But he tweets like, "We have our first Canadian Diamond." I was like, oh, that's cool, and that made me feel special. And that's when it kind of clicked in my head. I was like, hold on. Like this is about helping people, but maybe this can be like a real business, and maybe I can help a lot of people just in my spare time. I love my current career, I love it, but maybe I can help a lot of people, and who knows where this could take me. And that's when the map that I was telling you about, the reason I told you all those stories, that's when that started coming into play right away for me, and I think I connected the dots fairly quickly. And so that's why I'm telling you the stories, because one of my tips is that you connect them after this call. I started connecting the dots. Right? I started connecting the dots that what did I know? What did I know so well that maybe other people might not know so well that could make me unique, right? I had done public speaking. I had, some people don't know this, but I went to Queen's University, which is one of the top colleges in Canada, and I took a 1-week course on transformational leadership, which studied like Nelson Mandela and how all these movements happened, and so I studied all these things, and so I started putting all the pieces together. Right, that I saw my dad change this person's life, that I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, that I was good at computers, and I started a blog, and I started doing all these things that I knew I would be really good at, right? Because that's what I had always done. I took what I had done before and I applied it to Beachbody, and that allowed me to help so many people in record time. Our team grew so quickly in Canada, and we had a lot of struggles in Canada. We don't have all the products you do in the U.S., we don't have everything available to us, but I always led with my heart. I always led with like, how can I help people literally lead healthy, fulfilling lives? I remember listening to Carl in Canada a couple months ago, and he said that our job is that like when someone's fallen on the ground and they're bloody and they can't get up and they're crying and they feel like the world isn't going to help them, our job is to take that person and pick them up and give them something to believe in again. That's really what we are. Because so many people go through their whole life just doing whatever everybody else does. Go with the flow, right? That's why our minds are programmed to avoid pain as much as possible, to avoid change as much as possible. That's why when the second some things start going good for you, everything seems to go wrong and almost pull you to stay where you are or avoid things that might change your life in a great way forever. Right? Because that's just the way that our minds are programmed to behave. We can't change that. So that's what our job is. Our job is to say no more, enough's enough. I'm going to be that rock in that river of people just flowing by life like it doesn't matter. You have to be that rock. So when someone needs help, they know that they need to reach out to you to get help. And that's the key with this business, is really helping all those people. I'll tell you a weird story. I was listening to Joel Osteen. I love listening to him. He's just an amazing guy. If you don't listen to him, you totally should. He has a brand new XM radio station, and it's just always on there in my car. And it's awesome personal development. I listen to it all the time. And there's just so much relevant stuff. Like, you just turn it on and you're like, wow, that really connects with me. And I remember he was talking about basically helping people and not, the Samaritan story. I'm sure a lot of you have heard. He was talking about how really things are thrown into our life. People are thrown into our life for a reason, right? And our job is really to help those people, right? And to help them become better in whatever possible way that you can. And so I remember listening to this a couple days ago in the morning, and I thought, okay, I'm going to make a decision right now that when I see scenarios around me, I'm going to reach out and help people no matter what I have to do. I'm going to go the extra mile and help them, because that's probably something being put into me for a reason. And this can really equate to Beachbody when sometimes people ask me, well, what do you do if someone doesn't want to buy a challenge pack from you, or what if they don't want to buy anything, they just want you to help them? Do you still help them? Obviously we still help them, and here's why. Let me tell you the story. So I listened to this thing, and I like to run every single day, and it was like minus 30 the day I was running, right, during the day. It was freaking cold in Winnipeg. And I love to run because it's my meditation time. It's literally the only time that I have that I'm not looking at my phone all the time, right? So I was running, and that's like my time, right? And I remember running, and I'm going through my normal route, and I see this house, and I see this lady taking out her groceries, right? She's got her van open, and she's taking out her groceries and kind of bringing them to the door. And I just remember, for some reason, something seemed off to me about the whole scenario. But I'm running. I got like my Dr. Dre beats on. I got like my jam going, my pump up song. I'm like invincible. I'm like woohoo, right? And I'm like, oh no, my time. I'm just gonna keep going. I'm sure she's fine. It's take her a little more time. But no, like and then it like hit me. It was like, whoa, you promised that you were gonna help people no matter where they were, and I was like, this is like smack in the face, right? It's like God reaching out and saying, boom, prove it. And I was like, okay, and I actually ran past, truthfully. I ran past, and then for some reason, I was just like, okay, I'm going to run back. So I run back, and she's still doing it, and she's still bringing her groceries in. So I go there, and I'm like, hey, do you mind if I help you with your groceries? I'm around. I can totally help you. And she's looking at me like I'm kind of crazy, and I'm sweating bullets because I'm running, and I got my headphones on. So I think the fact that I was kind of dressed sporty kind of made her trust me a bit more. And I was wearing I was actually wearing this PIX jacket. And so I end up, she's like, okay, fine. So I help her with the stuff. I bring her to the door. And she's kind of walking kind of like weird. And she goes to the door. And all of a sudden she looks at me and she kind of starts, like, tears start coming down her face. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? Like, hopefully I didn't do something wrong because, I was worried that I did something. And I was like, I'm sorry. Is everything okay? And she said, and she tells me this, and I start crying. And I cry for everything. But she basically tells me that 3 weeks ago, her husband had passed away suddenly, and she didn't say why, and that this whole time, her family and friends had been bringing her foods and things like that and helping her grocery shopping, but this time was like the first time she was grocery shopping by herself and bringing her groceries in. And she said that I think it was 35 years, she said, in 35 years of them being married, I'm going to start crying. This was the first time that she had to bring in her groceries by herself because her husband had always done it for her. And that she had been praying, she had been praying a couple days before for something to show her a sign that everything was going to be okay, and that this for her was like a sign that everything was going to be okay. And sorry about that. Just sometimes I'm a little bit emotional. My team knows that I'm sometimes a little bit weird. But so that to me was like, to her was a sign that everything was going to be okay. And that really hit me like big time, because to me, that's really what we do as coaches, right? There's so many times that I get, especially now, like it's harder when you get successful, guys. People think it's easier. It's harder. You get 100 messages sometimes a day, and you can't get through all of them, even if you tried. And those people that message you, those messages that you get, those are real people, right? They've been brought into your life for a reason, right? It's for you to help them. And you have a skill. All of you have a unique skill and a talent and a determination to be able to help change someone's life. And that's what we do as coaches, is we give that people that last breath when they've given up all hope, right? You need to understand, many times we're that last line of defense for people that if we don't help them and we don't succeed, they're not going to get a second chance, right? And I've always carried that with me, that kind of mindset. But this happened like last week. As it happened, it really kind of hit me, and I'm going to keep that story for the rest of my life, and I'm going to try as much as I possibly can. We can't answer everybody, but I think as much as possible, we need to realize that, number one, this business is always about you, because you can't help anyone if you're sick. So if you're sick, or if you haven't been working out, doing your workout programs, and drinking your Shakeology every day, that's number one. But number two, is that you need to be willing and able to help as many people as possible, whether they're on your team, whether they're on someone else's team, whether they're a challenger that tells you they have no money, whatever it is. You got to get them into a free clean eating group. You got to get them reading stuff. You got to just help the person however you can, because I promise you, if you just do that, everything else will work. I look back at my career as a coach now, which hasn't been that long. It's been just a little over 2 years. My weak leg volume today is over 50,000. I have 3 business centers. My strong leg volume is over 200,000. And I look back and I'm like, could I have done this? Could I have done that? Knowing what I know now, and you would think that I could do it quicker, but the reality is I don't think I would have, because I would have gotten so caught up on the points and all these other things that it would have been so hard to do. The one thing that got me through this whole way was that all I wanted to do was help people. All I wanted to do was fit clubs. And that's all I've ever wanted to do my entire life. And Beachbody gave me this incredible avenue to really help people and talk to people like I'm talking to you guys today, right? And the last thing I want to end with before I kind of hand it back to Wendy is really that this business isn't really that hard. Yes, we all have unique things, and I hope after this call you all write down 4 or 5 unique little things that make you unique. Look back at your life, right? Look at those little things that not only you think stood out, but that other people clearly called you out on, right? There are those moments. There are 4 or 5 moments like that if you take those moments, right, they make you unique, right? And if you can figure that out, this business is actually very easy. Right? Let me give you an example of something that's really hard. Right? I studied Nelson Mandela. Here's a guy that was imprisoned, right, in jail for like 20-some years. Right? He was trying to help people, and they put him in jail. And while he was in jail, they murdered most of his friends and family. Right? He was trying to help people. He ends up spending pretty much the best years of his life in prison. As he comes out of prison, ends up ending the entire apartheid movement, and not only that, but ends up forgiving the people that put him in jail, murdered his friends and family, does it peacefully, a peaceful revolt, if you will, and changes the entire history of South Africa. This guy that goes to jail, right? That's freaking hard to do. You convincing someone that has an $800 cell phone to buy a challenge pack that's $140 is pretty freaking easy to do. There's a lot of things that are hard in life, and we throw that word around like it's nothing, like that's too hard or this is too hard. No, being a Beachbody coach is freaking easy, right? I'm sitting right now in this really comfortable chair talking to you guys and sharing as much as I possibly can, but at the same time, there's other incredible people that have done things that are so freaking hard. Right? I don't know if you've seen them. If you want to cry, I like crime movies. I don't know if you've seen the movie by Stephen Hawking's. I can't remember what it was called, The History of All Things or something like that, or The Creation of All Things. I saw it on the plane. I was flying out to Calgary, and the Stephen Hawking story was amazing. And this was a lot of it, but it was love story. But they also went into some of the things that he's done. And what he did, right, losing movement and, going to the University of Cambridge and studying all these amazing things and having deep in his heart this one dream to figure out all things and how everything came to be was incredibly hard. Writing, he ends up going, basically he can't move, can't speak, ends up collapsing in an opera house. They end up having to surgically inject him right through his neck so he couldn't speak anymore. They cut through his throat, so he wouldn't be able to speak anymore. Ends up writing a book, basically fully paralyzed, using his hands, and now has gone on to be one of the most renowned, physicists of our entire time in history. Right? That's freaking hard to do. That's hard. You talking to someone and calling them on the phone and saying, "Hey, do you want to join my 7-day free clean eating group?" while you're in the comfortable home that you live in with a great roof on your head? That's pretty easy to do, right? You all heard the story if you were a coach last year and you went to Coach Summit, Ziad Nayad, right? Someone that wanted to become the greatest swimmer of all time, right? And she ends up doing it and fails like 3 or 4 times, by the way, swimming from Cuba to Florida. But she finally ends up doing it and succeeding at it because she had this burning desire. That's hard to do. What we do is really easy, and I say that with all the kindness in my voice, right? And my last wish to you guys is this. This is a new year still. It's March 3rd. The entire year is upon us. You just got Beachbody On Demand that I think is going to revolutionize not just our business, but it's going to be one of those things that people are going to be talking about and copying for years. I think it's bigger than Shakeology. It's literally an auto-ship digital format. It's going to allow us to explode across the world, right? When I started this business, we barely had just got challenge packs, right? Everything was in Canada. Nothing was approved yet. In Canada, when I started, I didn't get paid for 6 weeks, and if I got lucky, because the checks came in the mail, right? Now, everything is direct deposit, and it's easy. You get paid all the time. Like, now is the time to go. It is March 3rd. March 3rd of 2015. I promise you there are people on this call, some of you maybe just signed up last week, that are going to become 5-star diamond coaches this year. There are some of you that will do it. Yet there are some that won't. The ones that will don't necessarily have the best skills, talent, anything of that. All they have is pure will and the desire to want to help other people no matter what. So with that, I want you guys to have the most incredible, amazing, banner year, a year where you crush it, where you hit Success Club 20 every single month, where you dream bigger than you've ever dreamed in your life, where you set right now, you set a goal that you will help transform and change the lives not only of yourself, not only of your family, not only of your community, but of everyone around you, and you will become the shining beacon of light where people look at you and go, I want to be associated with you because I need help, and I know that you will help me no matter what. And you're going to be that person that when you see someone going down the street and they need to help, you're going to stop everything you're doing because it's not important at that moment, and you are going to help them. So with that, guys, I'll pass it back to Mindy, and I want you guys to dream the extreme and live with passion.
Wow, that was absolutely amazing, Miguel. Thank you so, so much. And I do have a few thoughts that I want to share. So everyone just hang tight and stay on the line. But I was in tears right with you. And it's so funny. Brad will probably kill me for saying this, but my husband I'm in my office and my husband's out in the kitchen. And I got a text from him saying, you're crying in there, I know it. And then he wrote, I'm not. And I'm like, yeah, right, you're totally crying after hearing him speak. So, I mean, you even had my husband crying over the stories you were telling. But what I wanted to mention, you know, just to bring everything together, I mean, everything that Miguel says, I 100% believe in his story. Like, your story was just so great, and I love that you said your entire life is like a roadmap. So some of you might be thinking right now, yeah, but I didn't have my dad didn't take me to like a personal development course when I was little, so that might be why I'm not successful, because I haven't had all of these things like he had leading up to this, or whatever the thing in your head might be. You know, maybe it's that you don't have background in social media like he has had, or whatever idea that your mind comes up with, that is an excuse and a fear. So I just want to identify that real quick and let you know that, no, that is not the truth. Every one of us has a different roadmap. We all have a different journey. We all have these different events that just one thing happens like that, and you either pay attention to it and connect the dots. That's what Miguel has done. He's noticed all these things in his life, and now he's connecting the dots, how it's led him to where he is now. Okay? And, you know, I've done the same thing, and I've gone through my life, and I could have said, why did this happen? And there has been times, you know, like some of you know this, most of you know this on my team, but I know some of Miguel's coaches on here. My daughter has autism. And when that happened, of course, I was like, whoa, how did this happen? Why, God? You know, all this stuff. But now I'm connecting the dots for that situation. I've connected the dots why Beachbody was brought to my life. I've connected the dots why me, of all people, were able to be successful in this. You know, so that's what we're asking you to do tonight. I want you to go back through your life events. Instead of using the events that has happened to you as something bad, it's all it is leading you to where you are today. And the last thing I want to say is to, first of all, I love that little fear thing that you said, writing fear in the middle. I highly recommend that you guys all do this. Totally recommend that. And the last thing I wanted to say is, now I forgot. I think it was that something about don't letting fear get in your way. Don't let fear stop you. And just know that the reason Beachbody coaching was brought into your life, this is what I was going to say, by the way. The reason why Beachbody coaching was brought to your life is for a reason. It was meant to be. But God is saying, here, you can either use this for you or you could not use this. Just like Miguel could have kept running, or he could have stopped and helped that lady with her groceries and literally made the biggest impact on her life after such a horrible tragedies happened with her life, a huge change for her. That was a life-changing situation for her and for him. So now you have this in your hand. You have this opportunity. You have Beachbody On Demand. You have all the tools and training with our teams and with Team Beachbody. And this business does not play favorites. Does not play favorites at all. Miguel could have said, oh, I'm from Canada. I don't get paid for 3 months. This sucks. I'm not going to do this. I have a great job anyway, and I have my family. No, you can do this. So you just have to do it. Okay, you guys? So I just want to say, oh my gosh, Miguel, thank you so, so much. I'm getting texts from all my coaches right now saying how much they love you and what a great speaker you are, and I 100% agree. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to speak to our team tonight, and I am looking forward to chatting with your team next week.
Yeah,
all right, you guys,
so
have a great night.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, everybody, have a great night.